Hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, demand replenishment for raw material picking. Presenting with us today from Microsoft, we have Mirza Abdic, who is a Senior Program Manager. Now it's my pleasure to hand you over. Mirza, you now have the floor.
Okay, thank you everyone. My pleasure is to present this functionality for you today that we have delivered or created recently, and we will go through the deck first, and at the end of the PowerPoint slides we will go into one of the test machines and go and look where to set up this feature and how it works, and then at the end we will advertise for some of our main blogs and the learning material sites. And then we will be open for questions, of course, and try to answer as many questions as you have. So my name is Mirza, and I'm working in the warehousing and distribution team from Copenhagen, which is a development center for supply chain and logistics. And this feature, it's about warehouse operations, which means that the way that we do demand replenishment and now has been enabled for raw material picking. So let's start. First slide basically describes how today's presentation will be divided. And we have selected 4 steps. So we have about demand replenishment for raw material picking, where we will cover the challenge that was solved and how we have solved it. Where does it apply? So where it applies means that we will tell where does it apply in the system, what is supported. And I have decided today to expand my session with a little bit of another topic, just to give you a goodie. And it's of course related to replenishment itself. That's why I selected to tell you about it. So we will go to through that one as well, see where it is set up and where it applies as well. And then we will go into the demo mode, logging in one of the machines and seeing the demo of these features that will be presented today. So let's start. Well, the first we will be talking about demand replenishment as such for raw material picking and for the other processes like sales demand, so which means sales order picking and transfer order picking and so on. So the outbound logistics where we have picking procedure will sometimes require materials to be replenished into the picking locations in order to be picked and delivered to a customer or to another warehouse facility if we are talking about transfer orders and such. So we have 2 types of replenishment into system, as you probably know today, which is we have basically 3, but 2 main are mean and max replenishment and demand replenishment. Our customers are using mean and max replenishment as a kind of batch-based process, which means that usually it's once a day, or somebody is also running it more often. The minimum and maximum replenishment will basically assess the selection of the locations or a complete warehouse, if you set it that way, but that's rarely a case. And then look at the location level, what material levels are there and what needs to be replenished. It works for the fixed location, it works for the variants, it works for the items, it works also for empty locations, but then you need to set up the fixed locations in order to run empty locations. That's the part that we call mean and max replenishment. So it's basically, we should talk about use case. It could be in the morning when we are in the supermarket, when the shelves are replenished before supermarket opens. Normally it's based on such a replenishment, basically making sure that shelves are ready with the items needed throughout the day as much as possible, so people can pick the items and buy them. So each of the items will be replenished on its location to the certain level of quantity that is run by the min and max. However, this topic that we're covering today, it's not about min and max replenishment, it is about demand replenishment. And I would like to emphasize that demand replenishment is an exception, and it occurs when demand cannot create work for picking on the range of the locations that has been set up in the workflow of the warehouse through the location directives, where we usually set up where to look at, where we want to pick. If that fails, at the end of the wave, there will be a method called, we will see that in the demo, called demand replenishment, and that method, when everything fails to allocate through the location directives, all of the steps, lines, and actions we have set up, like look first in this aisle, if if it cannot find the item, look in the second aisle, and so on, so on. Then, if the replenishment method has been added to the wave, then it will say, okay, now the last thing we can do is to try to replenish this location and then unfreeze the demand, basically to be able to be picked. However, this demand replenishment, when I say it is an exception, we have seen the customers are setting this more like a rule than exception, and that's wrong in our minds, because if you have a lots of demand replenishment going on throughout the day, that takes time, because every time demand replenishment is created, it is basically requiring a physical movement of items from a location X to a location Y, which is a place where we are picking from. That it's time consumption, and we know that everything in the warehouse that has with the consumption of time equals consumption of money, and that means that we are kind of costing the system unnecessary. So we need to minimize amounts of the demand replenishment, if possible, through this bigger sizes of the locations, maybe having a more than one fixed location, and so on, or replenishing with a bigger unit of measures like pallets, and so on. But we cannot avoid, in the many circumstances, to run the demand replenishment. That could be that we have deviations in demand. Suddenly, one day, we have advertised for something, and then we receive more orders than usually. Of course, we don't have time to change our physical layout, so we might be solving these exceptions through the demand replenishment flow. The demand replenishment was able to be on outbound documents, so transfer orders, and we had sales orders, but we did not have it for the raw material picking. And as described here in the challenge part of the chapter, a wave template could not be constructed for raw material picking, and demand replenishment method could not be added for production orders and Kanbans. This lack of functionality resulted in basically quite manual solution for the materials that cannot be picked from the location that you have set up through the location directives, which means a workflow for picking. So they will simply fail. And when the demand replenishment is not able to be set, then you don't have any other choice than to go and manually add the lines that failed from the pool for raw material picking into the new wave or existing open wave, and then run the wave manually again, unless you have done some customizations. That was not that lean, and it was quite basically, it was not good that we did not support all the nice things that we have around demand replenishment for the raw material picking as well, which includes production orders and Kanbans for the lean manufacturing. Well, we have now decided to solve that, and in your spring release you have this functionality, and probably you ask yourself, will it be backported? Yes, all of the functionality that we have released, or most of it for the spring release, we will try to backport, but we cannot give you any exact time. We are right now working on the backporting, so it will be available and announced. But to go back to the solution, now we have a wave template for the raw material picking, both the production order type and the Kanban, that can be added method called demand replenishment, and it works exactly the same and has same capabilities as we have seen for the sales demand replenishment, which means that we can have unreserved quantities set. And what is that? To use unreserved quantities, as you know, on the replenishment template, we can set up the small checkbox to use unreserved quantities. So if we decide to move pallet at a time, but demand that has kicked the demand replenishment and the movement of that pallet, it's less than a pallet, then we want, if the new demand comes, to allocate from that pallet, even if it is not moved yet from that work, so we don't create a new pallet movement with no reason. That's what this option is, and it will also work for the demand replenishment as such, so there is no any difference. We also have the capability, as you know, recently added, that we can, it's already released, that we can now not only froze the header of the demand and not being able to pick other lines of your demand. So before we had this challenge as well, where we had a work header, and if we need to pick up, let's say, 7 items for this, it was sales order based. Let's say we are breaking the work by sales order, and this sales order has 9 items, let's say, to be picked, and only 1 needs the replenishment. Then before days we will close or lock or freeze all of the work, because freezing happened on the work header, so you will not be able to pick up the rest of the lines. Well, that has been solved as well. So we will see that in the demo you can set up your own choice if you want to freeze the line, which will then enable you to pick 8 of items that can be picked and then wait for the 9 to be replenished to be picked, but you are not stopped, you're not kind of prevented to pick the rest of the items. And that goes the same for the demand replenishment setup through the work templates. I will show that. So I think this will be the big improvement for everybody who is running raw material picking for the manufacturing, and with the other improvements that we have done in the areas of manufacturing integration into the warehouse, it's becoming a more and more complete solution. So where it applies, well, a wave template can now be created, as it says here, basically for raw material picking and demand replenishment. So method can be added now for production orders and Kanbans, as I said. So just to be completely clear, it is support both for Kanbans and production orders, as we will see in the setup. The capabilities fully correspond to the capabilities for sales order picking and transfer order picking, as we said before. So now, when this said, you should kind of remember what I said, because I will repeat all of that in the demo again. So you will see that, but before that we will go through the goodie part, and after we have touched how it is set up. So the way we set up, it's exactly the same as the demand replenishment for the wave template for the sales order, for instance. So we will just add a method for replenishment, and then we will use it as exactly as we do for the sales order, relating to the location directives and work templates, and then being able to move items from a replenishment locations to a picking locations. Now we are going into today's extra goodie, and it is closely related. It has just been basically developed, and its KB article, it's already issued, so it is backported for R3 as well, where we have done a feature called immediate replenishment. Now you probably ask yourself, what is immediate replenishment? Well, it is restrict by unit, among some other things, and so as it says, it will be a part of the default release 7.3 full release, and also it has been released as a hotfix and a KB for 2012 R3. Now, what is immediate replenishment? As the system was designed, when we had demand, it will, let's say we need to pick 150. On the sales order line, it says pick 150. We are picking 1 pallet, and we are picking 50 from each area. And if we assume that, maybe better example will be if we say we are picking 150, 100 it's a box, and 50 it's 50 eaches. So box needs to be picked from the box area, and the eaches are picked from the manual each area. And if you imagine that these boxes are basically handled by the mini loader, let's just say it's an automatic warehousing system, which will fetch the box in a very quick way, and a number of boxes that we calculate, and then the rest will be picked from the each area manually by the warehouse employees. Now we invest in equipment for a reason, and if you imagine how the location directives have been set before, we were not able to do this, because what we will do normally, we will set up the location directives saying, please first restrict by unit a box. So there will be a separate line or a path that goes to the box area, which in our case will be in the mini loader. And then it will say the next line will be handling eaches, so you go to the each area for the rest of the quantity. So if we have this example of 150, that's a 1 box and let's say eaches, what will happen is that system will say, okay, by the unit of measure in the system, I can calculate that this is the 1 box and 50 each. Through my location directives, the workflow, it will say, well, I need to pass my box to this area and pick up from there, which is a mini loader, and then 50 eaches from it. So let's assume that there is nothing in the mini loader, or it could also be a manual area, doesn't matter, where we have some equipment and people hired to pick up the boxes. And if we are missing some boxes because we need to replenish with a new pallet there. What system will do if it fails to allocate boxes from the box area, as it was before, it will pass that quantity just to the next line, which in our case will be each path, so the line that is leading to the path of each and showing us where the locations are where we pick eaches. But now picking from eaches will not anymore be a 50, but 150. It will try to allocate 150. And now you can imagine if you have had the need of 10 boxes, that could potentially be 1,000, and if it fails, it will just pass that quantity to the line level where the eaches are to be picked, and somebody will suddenly be asked to pick 1,050 eaches, which will cause a trouble in the each piece picking area. So to avoid that, we want to respect this restrict by unit and fix it through the location directives. And why? You ask yourself, why did system allocate first at the end? Because in the wave, as you remember, the method, it's one that is basically at the end of the wave processing almost, which means that when it starts through the location directive saying try to pick boxes from box area, oh, there is no any, it will then continue to the trying of the lines, which will be eaches, and if it fails to figure out that there is no 1,050 eaches in the piece picking area, which will be normally true, then it will generate first there, it will generate a replenishment. But now, replenishment will not end into your the box area, it will end with a big probability into your each area. So now you are bringing a large amount of goods to the each area being replenished there because you have this demand of 100,050 that was transferred to the each area and waits to be replenished. That was at some customer facilities causing big problems. And of course, when we have this nice restrict by unit and unit measure calculation transitions and whatnot, we also want to respect that with the replenishment. So we decided to fix that, and we did something we call immediate replenishment. So it will allow you to replenish inventory right after allocation directive line fails. So in my example, when the box allocation of boxes fails, instead of if set, instead of going with the quantities to the lower lines, it will just say, no, I replenish this immediately. And then you can have your own separate replenishment set to replenish that area. And the rest of eaches, in our case 50, will be continue to be picked from the each area. So basically we are making sure that, yes, I want boxes to be picked in the box packaging material from the box area, and I have now a possibility to do replenishment of that. And each is exactly the same. It could be some other reason why you want to connect a single replenishment template to one of the lines. So we have broad replenishment from the bottom of the wave into the lines level in the location directive. It is a very good feature. So now, where does it apply? Immediate replenishment is used during wave execution if allocation fails for a location directive line that has a replenishment template set. We'll see what that's set in the system. How it is set up? We will see that when you open location directive on the line, now we have a new field. It's the drop-down menu where you can basically select from your existing replenishment templates that are set, and then that one will be used if for some reason units cannot be allocated. In our example was boxes. And now you're probably asking yourself, what if I have set immediate replenishment, I select the replenishment template, everything fine, it fails, it should have used that replenishment template, it tries, but my setup of replenishment was wrong because you need to set up location directives for replenishment and so on. So let's say that setup was incomplete, so it's wrong. What will happen? Right? It's a very good question. That will be an exception to be handled, but what will happen? We have decided not to stop the process, so if for some reason the immediate replenishment of that unit of measure fails on that line, that could be because you don't have goods to replenish boxes anymore from that place where the boxes are or pallets, or that your setup is wrong, simply that it doesn't work. So what we will do in that case, we will then pass the quantity of, in our case was in the beginning 100, later if 10 boxes it will be 1,000, to the each area. So we will not prevent picking, we will pass it to the each area, and you will in your log see that it failed to replenish, and you will then for the next time correct your setup or make sure that there are goods to replenish with. But our process continues, but it will first pass the quantity now if the immediate replenishment fails. Good. Now we can go to the machine, and I hope that it's still alive. So let's just test that part. So it is. And we will start from the raw material replenishment, demand replenishment, to see how that is set up. And we know that it's set up on the wave. So wave templates. As sales order demand replenishment. So here we have a wave template, and if we edit the wave template now and we add a new one called raw material replenishment, and we do exactly the same here, and I do that for site 2 and warehouse 24. Oh, 24. And in my methods, I could say usually this is the old stuff if I want to process it automatically or not and so on. But under the method, that's the interesting part. So now you see I'm creating for the shipping, even that I'm calling it raw material replenishment, and we see that it has containerization replenishment. But what we need to do here, we need to change to the production order and then do exactly the same. So let me so now I'm constructing for the type you see here, production orders, right? Wave template type. And it will be for the site 2, 24. And then it's there. And then I will move all of my, so we need first to say once, and then everything is moved, all of my default. But look here, and I do this on purpose. I have made system to not show you method here, and then you will ask yourself, but how can it doesn't work? Yes, it does. And you should be, this is a tip. If you don't see the methods here, you need to regenerate them. So let's just find the methods. This is my test machine, so my search, it's not perfect. Let's see if it found my methods. No, but I can do waves. I can go to my warehouse management, and under the waves, now let me just see. Where do we have them? Here it is. Wave, it was a correct wave process methods. So you see here, I have production, create work in Kanban, but I don't have the demand replenishment for production or the demand replenishment for the Kanban. But I can regenerate this. And now I get Kanban replenishment and my production replenishment added. So going back to the waves, wave template, you will see now that if we go to our production order and we do exactly the same, here it is, production replenishment, that can be added. So we added this one, we mark the production replenishment, and we add it. And you see it is the last one before the work is created. So when we run through all of the allocations that I was explaining, the reason why we introduced the goodie one, which was the immediate replenishment. So, but now you can see that you can set up exactly the same way for demand replenishment for the production, and it will be exactly the same for Kanban. So we can just prove that one as well. So if you're going to the Kanban, and now you see we have one created, and I can edit this one, and I can just add to the Kanban as well my replenishment. So, oh, sorry. So here we go, save. Now, we are going also to see, I mentioned once that you should be aware of that we can now set up work to be frozen when we have demand replenishment on both level of line and level of the header. So where is that done? Let's go to the wave, not template, but the work templates. Because as I said, you want to continue to pick rest of the items, not to stop picking of the items, right? Just because you need one that cannot be picked. So if we select one of the wave templates, like for picking staging, this one, Under the general, and please make note that it works differently. You can set up differently from work template to work template. So under the general, I have a small but very powerful enum here which says block entire work order or block individual work lines. Now, if I say block entire work order for this one, it could have its justification why we want to use that, right? So then you will say, well, I don't want to start to pick this order at all if it has any replenishment, right? But I could have some other area, dedicated area, say, no, I'm doing the picking. It could be in the way that I want to pick rest of the items, and then somebody will eventually solve this one. And if it is solved while I'm picking other 9 out of 10 items, let's say, and the one it's blocked because of it needs to demand replenishment, then it will be at the end as well asked to go there and pick it if a situation has been resolved, or otherwise I can choose to continue without. So, and then if I want to do that, I will go to block individual work lines, which means it will be only the lines that are needing replenishment that will be blocked, or as we call frozen. And until replenishment is done, they will be not unfrozen, and then we can continue with other lines. So it's a very powerful feature to remember. So now we want to cover a goodie part, which was the immediate replenishment. So if we go to the location directives, and under the location directives, we have implemented the feature here. It's called immediate replenishment template. So in this first case, it's a quite good case. The first one goes and picks up the boxes. And if I say, well, I want these quantities that are calculated that should be picked by boxes, I want to pick them from the area where I need boxes. And if I don't have them, I don't want to wait to finalize itself and then do the replenishment, which will then end in this line or path here. No, I want to do it immediately. So what I will do, simply I will edit this one and have ability now to select from the range of my already existing demand replenishment. So also gives you the power of basically tell the system this is the one to use. So we are now connecting the lines of the location directives basically with a dedicated demand replenishment templates, which is a very powerful in itself. So I will select this one. So now what will happen, as I said, if we run demand and it says it needs 10 boxes from this path and it goes down here, and please pay attention that if I had more than one action down here, so like more than one, several actions, it will first start replenishment, obviously, when all of the actions have been run through and try to be used to allocate the items, right? And then at the end, it will start replenishing areas as defined in the location directives for demand replenishment to that area, and then passing the other unit, which will be each to each area somewhere else. So it's a really, really powerful feature. Now, if for some reason, as I said, this demand replenishment template, it's set up not correctly, which could be, it could miss location directives or work template or something, so it simply fails, even that I, as a user, think that this is set up correctly because I could select one replenishment template. In that scenario, we will log that it failed, but we will not stop, of course, because we want customers to be able to pick up the goods. So what we will do, we will take that quantity that was supposed to be picked from there and pass it to the next line. That could be smaller boxes or eaches or so on. And the next line does not have immediate replenishment. It could, but it doesn't not have. And if you have set up your replenishment method, which is also required for this one, at the end of your wave template, then this one will also do the replenishment, but you can still say which one, if you have the dedicated or specific demand replenishment template to be used, you can still select it from the drop down. So this is basically how it works. And I think that it's quite clear. So these are the little bit about replenishment and such. So let's go to the replenishment template. Save this guy here, and then go to the replenishment template. So in the replenishment templates, we have a one demand replenishment template. This is the one that we selected because it was the only one of type wave demand. we selected it directly into the immediate replenishment, as you remember. So if I now edit one, what we need to pay attention to is these two checkboxes. The one was the one I was explaining, saying please allow wave demand to use unreserved quantity. So if we have set up this demand to, let's say, replenish in pallets, so I need 10 boxes, but I want to move a pallet. So obviously there might be some boxes that are not reserved on that demand replenishment and are not relating yet to any demand. Any new demand that we release could be attached to that unreserved quantities that maybe it's not moved yet. It's just existing work or in process. It works also in open, in process, and of course when it's closed, when the goods arrive from the area. Then you need to check up this box in order to do so. And it will minimize amount of the demand replenishment work lines, of course, and it will also make sure that you're not getting too many goods because you are replenishing by the certain unit into your picking area because you might simply lack space for it. And as you know, we also have a feature, if you should do so and you start piling the stuff in your picking area, we have the feature that we released in our spring release, and it was a part of the fall release last year as well, which was the move of the work with the work, move of the items with the LPs with the work associated, which means that will make sure that if I'm bringing the pallet to the picking location, I say, well, there's something there still, but obviously it's a part of some work because that's why I'm bringing the new pallet, for instance, to the location. I can simply, even that demand work exists on that existing pallet, I can move it wherever I want and my work lines will be updated accordingly, which is also a very powerful feature. So now we have basically covered a lot of things about demand replenishment. So let's recap. We covered that now we have demand replenishment for raw material, which is a Kanban and production orders, which is a very powerful thing for the production integration into the warehouse. And we also have now covered that we have this immediate replenishment now, which is respecting by unit, and can now have a dedicated connected directly the replenishment template. And we also have been talking a little bit about these replenishment templates here. And we also have said that in the case of the demand replenishment, that we can basically freeze the work on the header level or the lines for each of the work templates as we wish. So going back to the presentation, let's do so. And we were on this side. I just want, before I open for question, I just want to tell you that we have 3 excellent websites that I think everyone should visit frequently. The first one on the top, it's the blog, basically blog MSDN site for our team called Dynamics AX SCM. And here the team is releasing a lots of blogs which we try to be as detailed as possible. We are always starting with a challenge, business challenge, how it is solved, and step by step with the screens, procedure, how to set it up and use it. So people are big fans of these blogs, and we will continue to write as much as we can. And if you should see that something is missing, do not hesitate to contact us. Then we have a roadmap site, which is an official site where we do update what we have done recently. It's a kind of 3-step updating. You get updates in 3 steps. First, what team has achieved recently, what team is working on, and what will team be working on in the future, near future. And it's not only for the warehousing and distribution and TMS team, it's also for the rest of the Dynamics 365 for finance operation teams. So please do so and look what we are going to work on. We are working agile from our backlogs. And if you disagree, then you will go to the last site, which is an ideas site, launched not that long time ago, where we do basically give ability or possibility to all of the partners and customers to go in and create their ideas and suggestions what we need to change. And then other people can vote of each of the suggestions, and also the comments can be written. We are monitoring this. I think all of the teams of Dynamics 365 for finance operations have been asked to monitor this, and we do that for sure. And it is basically directly impacting. It's one of the sources that we are using to basically prioritize our backlogs, what features to work on next. So it is possibility for you to give your voice directly and steer in what direction and what features we will build for you. So do not hesitate to add, please, any ideas you might have, what we need to improve. And I'm sure that you as an expert with experience from field have suggestions. And other people will vote on that. You will see us answering these as well if we see that there are some workarounds, or you can do something else, or even that we say that we have already released the feature. So we are commenting as well from the R&D group this. So with this,